Perfect. So now we can start again with the third morphological group. And in some ways, many species in this group are quite similar to the previous one, but here the ground color on hindwing underside is more dark gray-brown or even totally gray. We have two subgroups, the marbled species and the uniform species. The marbled species are probably, in my opinion, the most difficult one, and then everything is almost done. So the first one is Erebia montana. Erebia montana inside this group is quite distinctive, especially due to its broad orange sickle-shaped band. So again, an orange band that is larger near the costa on forewing upper side, similarly to Erebia neoridas. But then, if we look on hindwing underside, it is totally different from Erebia neoridas because it has a highly mottled with white scale hindwing underside with a ground color that is dark gray-brown in males and usually paler in females. Moreover, especially in females, on a hindwing underside, the veins are quite evident and they are white. Okay, and this species is widespread in the Alps with a more western-oriented distribution, and it frequents rocky, warm slopes with flowery grasses places below and above the timberland. Erebia montana is partially similar to other two species that we have already mentioned before, so Erebia styx and Erebia styria. But Erebia montana has less marked ocelli on hindwing underside if compared to the group of Erebia styx and Erebia styria, and even more evident, the ground color on hindwing underside is clearly marbled, is clearly mottled with these white scales I've mentioned before, that are typical of Erebia montana, especially toward the basal area, because sometimes also Erebia styx and styria can be a little bit mottled, but usually not near the basal part of the hindwing underside. Now looking at these two other species, we start with Erebia styx. Erebia styx frequents warm, steep, rocky slopes with grassy vegetation along a quite broad altitudinal range, but its distribution is restricted to the Eastern Alps. So the range between Erebia montana and Erebia styx only partially overlap in Italy, Austria, and Switzerland. Erebia styx has well-marked pupilled ocelli on both wings. It has a broad orange band extending toward the basal area on forewing underside, and it has also a gray hindwing underside, less marble toward the basal area. As we already said, it is an important characteristic in differentiating it from Erebia montana. It can be also variable with some population with a strong reduction of orange bands on, especially on hindwing upper side. Erebia styx also has an important characteristics on forewing underside that is essential in discrimination between Erebia styria. We have to look at the margin, so we are, as already told, on forewing underside, and we have to look at the brown marginal border. In Erebia styx, it has a short projection basally that is always missing in Erebia styria. So here we have Erebia styx and Erebia styria in close comparison, and we can see here, highlighted with the red arrow, this projection on the brown marginal border in Erebia styx that is absent in Erebia styria, where in particular we can see that on forewing underside the dark brown marginal border becomes progressively thinner towards the anal vein, in contrast to what happens in Erebia styx. Another characteristic is that on forewing underside, on the forewing upper side, in Erebia styria, we often have a reduction of the orange bands that is sometimes much less wide and broad than in Erebia styx. But the most important characteristics in differentiating these two species is the shape, the dimension of this brown marginal border and the projection present in Erebia styx. Erebia styria is diciamo, as a habitat, a distribution, and a flight period highly overlapping with Erebia styx, so attention must be paid to this species. But Erebia styria is even has an even more eastward-oriented distribution than Erebia styx. But in some part of the Alps, especially in the eastern Alps of Italy, in Austria, and in Slovenia, attention must be paid because these two species can fly together in the same places along the same altitudinal range. If there are difficulties in the field because sometimes these brown border cannot be clearly observed, the male genitalia can be diagnostic in this species, in this pair of species. So another species really peculiar and interesting is Erebia gorge. It is smaller, slightly smaller if compared to the three previous one, and it is present along all the European Alps and can be considered really a high altitude species because it is mainly present in the higher part of its altitudinal range, so from the tree line upwards, and it inhabits rocks, screes, and dry stony grasslands. So a really peculiar and a really alpine habitat. It is a highly variable species, especially concerning the number of ocelli on forewing upper side. Its hindwing underside is dark grain-brown, thinly mottled with white and gray scales, and sinuous dark discal line can be seen almost in the middle of the hindwing underside. Its close-looking species are Erebia montana, that we have already seen, and Erebia triarius. Both of these species, Erebia montana and Erebia triarius, are considerably bigger than Erebia gorge, but as I have told before, for the first time in the fields, it's not always so easy to recognize a species from the dimension. So we can rely also on other feature. As told before, Erebia montana has its sickled shape orange band on forewing upper side that is diagnostic, so there shouldn't be problem. And Erebia triaria has, we will see it a little better in a while, but it has three aligned subapical pupille ocelli on forewing upper side that can be really useful in differentiating it from Erebia gorge apart from the dimension. There is, yes, there is a problem just because, as I have told before, Erebia gorge is highly variable. So in some cases, only in some location, especially more common in the Eastern Alps, some local variation of Erebia gorge, as the third one shown here down in the slide, can also have three aligned ocelli. But in this case, the Sinus dark post-discal line, the smaller dimension, and the peculiar habitat of Erebia gorge can help us in easily recognize it from Erebia triarius. Now it's time to Erebia triarius, that is quite easily recognizable thanks to these aforementioned three aligned subapical pupille ocelli. And it is also mainly a spring butterfly that flies at the beginning of the season, and it inhabits mainly dry grassland or clearings in woodland, but almost always with rocky ground. It can present a variation in the number of ocelli on forewing upper side, but it has always these three aligned subapical ocelli that are its main characteristics. It is also quite big, and also on hindwing underside it is dark gray with some white scales inside, so it has not a plain uniform ground color on a hindwing underside, but it is quite mottled. Unfortunately, it is listed as near threatened following the last European red list due to unobserved and also a predicted decline in part of its range. So it's really an interesting, peculiar species. So the next one, and the last in this subgroup, is Erebia pronoe. It frequents a variety of grasslands from the mountain to the alpine belt, so also above the tree line, and it is also quite widespread in the Alps. It can be variable. In particular, on forewing upper side, the ocelli are always very small, but in some cases they can be also missing. And also, the orange band, again on forewing upper side, is variable. In some population, it can be reduced and just surrounding the ocelli. In any case, Erebia pronoe can be recognized because it has no ocelli on hindwing underside, and the hindwing underside has two paler bands if compared to the more darker ground color, one near the base of the wing and the second one in the post-discal area. This can be seen both in males and in females, even if females are paler and more brownish, yellow-brownish than males. Erebia pronoe is again partially similar to the couple of Erebia styx and Erebia styria, but can be quite easily recognized, in particular because it has no ocelli on hindwing underside, as we have already told, because it has a less uniform background color on hindwing underside. Erebia pronoe has these two paler bands near the basal area and the postdiscal area that are missing in Erebia styx and Erebia styria. As we saw already before, they are quite uniform, especially near the base of the wing. And moreover, in Erebia pronoe, the forewing underside has an apical marginal area thinly mottled with gray scale that is missing in Erebia styx and in Erebia styria. So this group of difficult species is finished, and we can start with the uniform Erebia species of group 3 that are quite easier. In particular, the first one is Erebia pandrose. Erebia pandrose has a wide range in the Alps, but it is locally distributed, mainly at high altitude above the tree line and stony alpine meadows. It starts flying usually at the end of the spring, beginning of the summer. So it is at such an high altitude, one of the first butterfly in Arabia that we can find. And it has also a characteristic undulating flight. So if you find in the field Erebia pandrose for a few times, then you can also recognize this species from its characteristic flight. Is really typical and can be easily recognized. But it is also quite easy to be recognized from its general appearance, because it has, in particular, on the forewing upper side, 3 to 5 blind black subapical ocelli in small orange spots. And also on the forewing upper side, it has another important feature, that is a brown stria just after these orange bands in the cell. Also, the hindwing underside is quite characteristic, because it is quite plain gray, uniform gray, but with two dark wavy lines, one at the end of the basal area and the second one at the beginning of the postdiscal area. The second species of this subgroup is Erebia scipio. Erebia scipio is a highly localized alpine endemic. It is present only in the southwestern French Alps, and it is also present in a really peculiar habitat, because it frequents steep rocky slopes with sparse vegetation. It has also been assessed as vulnerable, and it is now really rare and in decline. So unfortunately, there are really few opportunity, occasion, and places where we can find these really interesting species. In any case, it is also quite easy to be recognized, in particular due to the uniform background color of hindwing underside, that is brown in male or gray in female. Also, the hindwing upper side is quite characteristic, because it is characterized, it presents two twin large white pupilled subapical ocelli. The next species is Erebia pluto. It frequents a habitat similar in some way to Erebia scipio, because it also frequents steep screes with moraines with sparse vegetation, but it is more widespread. It has a wider geographical range. It is more widespread in the Alps, but it is always quite localized because it is a high altitude species. The altitudinal range indicated on the IUCN species accounts is quite wide, but usually Erebia pluto can be found well above the tree line. It is also quite easy to be identified in the field because it is characterized by a uniform black or dark brown color on hindwing underside. On the upper side, the dark reddish postdiscal band is usually without ocelli, but there are also local variations with pupilled ocelli on both wings, especially in the eastern parts. But in any case, Erebia pluto can be quite easily recognized due to its dark and uniform appearance. So the last species in this group is Erebia. This is another slide which show some of the variation of Erebia pluto that I told you. So the variation present in the eastern Alps with ocelli on the upper side, but the underside is always really uniform, almost missing the orange bands that are diagnostic. This is Erebia melas, the last of this group. This species, the distribution of the species interests only really marginally the European Alps, because it is present inside the European Alps only in part of Slovenia, and also in Slovenia is really localized with only one or few population currently known. This species is again linked to rocky slopes with grassy vegetation, and it is again a dark species with almost no or not so visible orange bands on both underside and upper side of both wings, and it is in particular peculiar for its general really dark brown ground color, and in particular really evident in females is the color of the hindwing underside that is thinly mottled with dark brown scales. And this is an important feature for the recognition of this species, but as I told before, is really localized in the European Alps and can be found only in Slovenia. So with Erebia melas, we have finished the third group. If there are some questions, otherwise I can start with the fourth and last one.
We don't have any question as far as I see.
But
so
we have a person that asked like to talk and
okay,
So,
okay, perfect.
Timu Cristina, so I'm going to allow to talk. Let's see, she raised the hand, so now you can talk. Are you there?
She's still muted.
I leave the shared screen, so we don't have the problem, but
Yeah, leave the screen like that.
yeah, okay.
Well, she raised the hands, but we don't hear anything. Timu Cristina, so
Maybe it was a mistake. We don't know.
maybe it was by mistake. Yeah, I can put it to
Well, we will have
lower
some time
the
at the end of
hands.
the presentation. If not, yeah, I guess we can continue, and then if she wants to say something, maybe at the end.
Okay, maybe later. Okay, but we have almost finished. It's time to the last
Yeah, we are
group.
almost there.
So yeah. These are the Brassy ringlets. This is the last group of 6 species, and these are 6 small species, usually less than 5 centimeter of wingspan. And these species are characterized by a four-wing upper side with 2 twin white pupillated subapical ocelli, an hindwing underside that is shining gray or pale yellow gray or brown with usually a slightly darker discal band and no reddish or orange spot and no ocelli, and an upper side ground color that is dark brown with green or blue reflections, especially in males. Unfortunately, distinguishing among these 6 really similar species is difficult, but fortunately, rarely more than 2 species live together in the same range, and when living together, they usually fly at different altitude. This is a recap map of the currently known distribution of the Brassy ringlets in the European Alps. And we can see from these maps that, as I have told, in not so many cases there is overlap in the distribution between these species, and this can really help us in a otherwise complex fact that basing our identification only on external feature. So starting with the first one is Erebia arvernensis, that is characterized by well-marked pupilled ocelli that are present not only on forewing but also on hindwing upper side. Moreover, the outer margin of forewing upper side is quite straight. It is a variable species, especially in terms of ocelli dimension, and the females are usually paler than the males, with a gray underside in males and more brownish underside in females. Erebia arvernensis is really common in the subalpine and alpine grassland, and it is distributed in the Western Alps. But no external characters allow the certain distinction between Erebia arvernensis and this next one, that is Erebia cassioides, more distributed towards the Eastern Alps. Currently, their range do not overlap, but we have to add that the taxonomy of this species is under elaboration because recent genetic analysis have been made, and it seems that they can be again placed in one species because a few years ago they were considered one species. So currently we have Erebia arvernensis in the Western Alps, Erebia cassioides in the Eastern Alps, but probably they soon become one species as they were some years ago. In any case, no external characters allow the discrimination of the 2 species, but their range currently do not overlap. The first species in this group is a range that is in between Erebia arvernensis and Erebia cassioides. It is called Erebia tyndarus. The habitat and altitudinal range it frequents is similar to the one of Erebia cassioides and Erebia arvernensis, so it is especially common in the subalpine and alpine grasslands. There are few contact zone between Erebia arvernensis and cassioides where usually we do not have to find both in the same places, but sometimes in some places we are not sure of which of these 𝘀𝗲𝗰 species is present. So it is important to understand how to identify them, and sometimes it is also useful to rely on the male genitalia. In general, based on external morphology, in Erebia tyndarus, the two subapical ocelli on forewing upper side are smaller. Sometimes there is smaller than in Erebia arvernensis cassioides. Sometimes there is only one. They can be also totally missing or blind. And also Erebia tyndarus usually has no ocelli on the hindwing upper side, but they may be really rarely present. Moreover, as a third feature, the outer margin of forewing is rounded, while in arvernensis cassioides it was more straight. So the other brassy ringlets in this group is Erebia nivalis. Erebia nivalis is more locally distributed compared to the brazier one, and it is present in central Switzerland, and then is more distributed in Austria, and it is present in a small range also in the northwest Italy. Its range only partly overlaps with that of Erebia cassioides, but usually where these two species fly in the same range, in the same massif, usually Erebia nivalis flies at higher altitude. And then this is not a precise rule, but can help a bit in the identification of this species. Erebia nivalis also inhabits mainly grassy rocky slopes above the tree line, so a little bit different biotope if compared to cassioides and arvernensis, and it has two small subapical ocelli that are always pupilled. The outer margin is rounded, and it is different with Erebia cassioides because we have seen previously that the outer margin is straight. And in particular, we can look at the hindwing underside that is paler and a little bit more uniform. So the post-distal band is not so evident in Erebia nivalis. Moreover, in the female's hindwing underside, there are really evident white veins. This feature usually help in the recognition between Erebia nivalis and Erebia cassioides, considering also the habitat and the altitudinal association of these two species in the part of the range where two species overlap. So another brassy ringlets is Erebia calcarius. It is again highly localized and occurs only in the Alps along the border between Italy, Slovenia, and Austria. So it is a really range-restricted species, and in this range, it shouldn't be overlap with the other brassy ringlet. It is a habitat directive species, and so it is important, its monitoring and conservation, and it is present again mainly in subalpine and alpine grasslands, especially if there are rocky places. This shouldn't give much problem of confusion with the other brassy ringlets due to its restricting range, but as general feature, we can see that it presents on forewing upper side a short orange postdiscal band, and the black ocelli on hindwing upper side are usually or missing or really small. Moreover, the hindwing underside of the species is quite characteristic because it has a clearly paler postdiscal band in males and with a more gray ground color compared with Erebia cassioides and arvernensis, and also especially females have a uniform pale gray ground color on the hindwing underside. That is usually an important and diagnostic feature in the species. Again, also the outer margin of a forewing is rounded, so more similar to Erebia tyndarus that is in the central Alps, and that can help in the recognition with Erebia cassioides that has a straight margin and can, especially at the border, partially overlap the distribution with Erebia calcarius. So finally, the last one is Erebia ottomana, and this species is not endemic of the Alps, but it is moreover highly localized in the Alps, so its distribution interests only marginally the European Alps, and in the Alps there are really few opportunity to find it, and where it is present, the other Brassy ringlets are usually not present, and it is present in Ardèche in France and in a small population in northeast Italy. Northeast Italy. It is present in grassy clearings, grassy woodland clearings between the mountain and the subalpine belt, and it is slightly bigger than the other Brassy ringlets. And the main feature for the recognition of this species is its discal band that has a brown or reddish brown color in males and has, in comparison, a pale yellowish brown color in females. So the hindwing underside in Erebia ottomana is much brownish if compared to the other Erebia species. So the species is highly localized, and it is a little bit bigger, and it is more brownish and contrasted on hindwing underside if compared to the other. It is also on forewing upper side a little bit less brassy than compared with the other. So it has not so marked the green reflection that the other Brassy ringlets have. And that's all. There are, fortunately, no more Erebia species, and we have finished.
Thank you
Almost
so
in
much.
time.
Yeah, pretty well on time. Thank you so much, Cristiana. It was really great. We don't have questions so far, and indeed it's a complex group. So it's complicated, but you explain it very, very well with the comparison with the most similar species. So again, thank you so much. We are really happy.
Thanks to you.
Yeah, it's going to be a reference once we share it on YouTube, different platforms. It's going to be a reference for many. And I think
Yeah.
now they have to process the information because it's a lot of information. But I already took some notes, pretty useful notes for the summer. Who knows?
People is not asking question. They say, grazie molto, Cristiana. Love the subtlety and variability, wonderful diversity within and across the Alps. And thank you so much for the clear explanations, people are saying. So great. Yeah, it was pretty nice. Thank you to you also for Paolo Palmi that there was behind and Simona
Yeah,
that I know this material is for him. So yeah, really, really thank you to all of our Italian colleagues helping us to explain the diversity in the Alps.
I will
It's really
tell
great.
them.